that we're going live.
Hello, fellow comic book ones. This is Damian. Welcome to my channel. We have another guest today, Damian from SleepyReader666. And of course, we have our co host, Otaku. Otaku, you're going to go by what's that name again?
Otaku, yeah, otaku's fine. Yeah,
Okay,
I
we'll go
prefer
by
otaku.
And
Yeah,
does otaku mean comics?
otaku in Japanese means geek. It just means
Geek.
geek.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Oh,
it's the
okay.
it's the word
So
for
you're
geek.
our geek tour guide. That's
Exactly,
perfect.
exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
So, Otaku Hyung, take it on.
Okay, so today we have with us Damian. He's a YouTube channel. He's a content creator for YouTube. He's also a big time comic book collector. But more, I would say you're kind of, I think you get comics and you actually kind of dive into the stories and the runs and the serials, and uh, that's where you find, I think, the joy in collecting, right?
Right.
To actually reading and getting involved in the stories. So I'm
True.
yeah.
I mean, that's why Sleepy Reader, why readers in my name. I'm definitely a collector. I'm a run collector, but that's based on my desires to read everything.
Right.
And I'm really into the history of comics and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so let's get right into how you kind of at what age you got into comics, and what books that got you into there.
Yeah, I got into comics at very shortly after my 10th birthday, which was 1971. I don't know if that makes me a little older than Naman or about the same.
Hold on, guys. Hold on. Cheers before we go on. I got my beer out, so cheers, guys.
I'm not drinking tonight, but cheers.
Okay.
I wish I was drinking.
What kind of beer do you have, Naman?
It's a Yingling. It's just my go-to beer.
I've had that in the past. And
Yeah.
this is a rogue ale that they call Newport Nights, a pale ale. I mean,
Nice.
India pale ale.
Nice.
Cool.
It's quite good.
All right.
Yeah. So in 1971, I was on a vacation with my family in Vermont, and it was the summertime, and I was very bored. And we ate at this diner that was inside a drugstore, a pharmacy, and there was a spinner rack. And I begged my parents to let me have a comic. I'd never read a comic before. And I went kind of crazy trying to choose, because they said you can only have just one, and that's all the comics you ever get, because comics will rot your mind.
Oh, no. Oh, dear.
So as luck would have it, I got a incredibly good comic. My first comic was this Avengers 93, which is a Neil Adams
Nice.
issue. And it's one of the Kree-Skrull War things. And so I obsessed over this comic, and I started scheming and ways to get more comics, even though my parents didn't allow it.
Wow.
So eventually I would find places where you could get comics. I would get my grandparents to get me comics. I would ask people to give me subscriptions for my birthday and Christmas and that kind of thing. And eventually wore my parents down, and they gave up and let me get comics.
Great.
But this was incredible. And sort of, I've heard you guys talk about Jim Lee. Neil Adams was kind of my Jim Lee. He blew my mind in my very first comic, and he's an incredible artist. And now I like to collect original art. You were talking about how you can't afford Jim Lee art. You can't afford Neil Adams art either.
No way.
Right.
Yeah.
I would love to own a piece of his artwork.
Actually, Neil Adams was one of my favorite too. Mike Reel, Neil Adams.
Yeah.
And Jim Starlin.
Jim Starlin was fantastic back in the 70s.
Yeah.
And
Neil Adams
and Jack Kirby was huge for me also.
Mm-hmm. Jack Kirby.
What?
So Naman had mentioned 5 best books from your collection, so this was my number one. Both because it's a great comic book and because it's a nostalgic favorite too.
Okay, so you lost that's not your original copy.
I did lose my original copy. I sold all my comics when I turned 16.
Oh, dear.
Sometime after that, when I thought I needed the money for gas and that I was going to be dating girls.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, girls over comics for sure.
And then I came back to comics when I was about 18, 19 in college.
After you got the girl.
I did have a girlfriend at that point who wasn't too critical, so she wouldn't make fun of me for reading comics. And so and when I came back to comics was right when Frank Miller was starting on Daredevil. So that like made me a huge fan all over again of comics. And then the whole Alan Moore stuff started happening. And so I've been to lesser and greater degrees ever since then reading comics. So it was only those 2 years off. So I think that leads me to a problem right now because you guys also were joking about being hoarders. I have 13,000 comics and Lord knows how many other things like books and original art and other knickknacks are based around comics. And it's a little too much.
Yeah. Wow. 13,000 comics. So take us through, I guess, some of the, I know you've got some comics to show us, but before we get to the comics, take us through what you were reading. I mean, you obviously mentioned that Avengers got you started. Who was writing Avengers at that time? What was that?
This was Roy Thomas and then Steve Englehart came along. So Steve Englehart was a huge favorite of mine, and Roy Thomas were huge favorites of mine.
Oh wait, why is that 25 cents? Is that a bigger size?
There was an odd moment where everyone jumped from 15 cents to 25 cents and did larger size ones.
Oh, I see.
And Marvel only did it for 1 or 2 months, and DC did it for 11 or 12 months. In fact, it was one way in which what's his name, Martin Greenberg. I want to say Greenberg, but that's not quite his name. The guy who ran Marvel Comics outfoxed DC. He got them to switch their price, and then he lowered his to 20. And that was like a turning point where Marvel started to beat DC. But I love these 25s, these nice fat ones. This is like 37 pages of Neil Adams
What year
art.
is that?
1971.
71. Okay, so that was 3 years prior to me collecting comic books.
Yeah. And I've tracked down, like with online stuff, this came out in the first week of August, and that makes sense of when I would have been in Maine. And this was literally the 10th anniversary of Marvel Comics being in existence. Mm-hmm. So, and I was born 1961, July 30th, 1961, and Marvel Comics came into existence roughly August 6th, 1961. So I'm pretty much the age of Marvel Comics.
Wow.
And I was obsessed by Marvel. I bought a few DC, but the only DC I really liked during the 70s was the Jack Kirby DC. Or if I found some Neil Adams. That was all. Most of the Neil Adams was mostly done, like all his best DC work, I think, finished up right around 71 or 72.
Okay.
But so work by him and Jim Steranko, if I could find it, those were my holy grails.
Oh, Jim Steranko! I made a cover for you on that one. I don't know if you noticed or not.
Yeah, I saw that with my giant Jim Steranko book. I have those Jim Steranko comics in many editions at this point.
Yeah.
But so I was obsessed by Marvel, and then in the 80s, I think when I came back, DC was a lot better. You know, DC had gotten a lot better, and I got very interested in that. But I think, you know, if you're wondering, like, I think maybe from what I've heard Naaman say, it might be partially his immigrant experience that helped you get into comics.
Me, it was I've known Superman for a long time from sort of like a distance. I mean, from appearing on the TV occasionally,
right,
as a commercial, not anything program, anything like that. So I've known Superman, but I never imagined owning my own comic books.
Right.
Until I came to the United States, and they said, "Hey, you could have this comic book. You just change this bottle in, and you got a comic book. And this bottle, you got a comic book."
It's strange how Naaman Hyung and I maybe because we're immigrants, I don't know, but we both of our favorite superhero characters is Superman.
Right.
And I don't know, I just feel like right now, for a long time, it seems like Superman wasn't as popular as he was maybe back during, the golden age and the silver age, where he was like the thing.
And even in the 60s and 70s, I think he was the #1 selling comic.
Right. Yeah. And then, I think around my generation, you just had a lot more choices in terms of what comics could offer, characters and stories. And also the stories, I think the Superman narrative just wasn't as like gritty. So
right. It wasn't gritty.
The story started evolving in the 70s to more adult, sort of adult targeted content. And then you had an introduction of the graphic novel. And so Superman, I don't know, you mentioned Frank Miller. Frank Miller really did Superman a disservice when he wrote The Dark Knight Returns and made him this sort of, tool of the government. And so that, I think, ruined him for a lot of kids my age and beyond. So
Superman was, portrayed sometimes as the ultimate immigrant and that sort of thing. And also he is the pure superhero. And I think when you're starting over or just beginning in comics or as a kid, that Superman thing is powerful.
Yep.
I think I grew up with reruns of Batman 66, and that made a big impression on me. I think that's when I first learned about superheroes. So I knew about pow and smack.
Yeah,
but my family moved around a lot. I never went to the same school for more than 2 years. So while not an immigrant or anything, I think that increased my love of comics. They were my friends. And I think Marvel Comics helped because Stan Lee had that whole sort of thing going as if we were all part of a club together.
Yeah.
And the other aspect was I had very strict parents. So I was not allowed to watch very much TV. I was not supposed to listen to rock and roll music. I loved science fiction, but they wanted me to read Charles Dickens. So it was kind of the revolution against them also early on.
Yeah. But I mean, it sounds like what their influence did rub off on you, because I would imagine for you, when buying comics, it sounds to me like, because I've watched your content and watched you analyze the stories, it sounds to you like if you pick up an issue and you don't connect with it within the first few, word bubbles, you're probably moving on.
Right. Well, that's partially because now I buy a lot of comics every week. So I'm reading, 9 to 15 new comics a week. So I'm constantly sifting through them, trying to figure out what is best for me as a reader. I really enjoy, but maybe I have intellectualized comics. So I really enjoy watching the evolution of comics. So part of when I'm reading new comics is just sort of keeping track of where things are going and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely have a very strong nostalgia pull also, but and that also may be affected by my childhood, because one way around the rule against comics was books about comics.
Yeah.
So this is not my original copy. I think it might be a.
So you're allowed to read those. You're allowed to read those.
Yes, I joined a book club just to get this book.
Yeah.
Wow.
They used to have those book clubs, just send in a dime and you'll get your first book for a dime. And then you have to get 4 more books during the year or something.
But you know what? I wish I had those books when I was growing up, because I think, those kinds of collector guides and things that the books that teach you how to sort of the genre, the larger genre of comic book storytelling would have helped me to better appreciate, comic books. I think I learned that as I got older, but as a kid, you don't necessarily understand all that and where it comes from in the history. Yeah.
Oh, there's a good friend of mine, Gore Vidal. So my pal, Jim Sterenko made a history of comics, which I somehow got a hold of.
Amazing.
I don't know even how much I understood of it when it was, analyzing the 1940s comics and stuff.
Wow.
But it gave me a sense of what I was reading at the time, being part of a larger sort of tapestry of things that evolve.
Right.
And this one also I really love. This was a book I remember I found at the library. It was the only book on comics at the library.
Wow.
And it was hardback back in like 1965 or something.
So you never returned it?
No, I bought it recently from a used bookstore around here.
Yeah.
But so yeah, that kind of affected me. So that sort of set me off all along to be focused on it. And then, I mean, I don't know about you, Otaku, but I know that Naman draws, and I started drawing, when I got comics. And so you connected to it from the art side. I copied so many pictures out of here, never achieving, never being as good as Neil Adams. And I haven't gotten
trace.
I haven't got much
Trace
beyond
paper.
imitating other artists. But I always got a lot of pleasure out of that. So yeah. So I think certain people's brains, I think, are wired for that sort of visual storytelling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, okay, I don't think we actually got to the core of, kind of where I was going, but can you name some of your, I guess, just off the top of your head, maybe 3 or 4 stories that kind of just resonate throughout your entire sort of comic book reading career, the 3 or 4 stories that you think are must reads for anybody who's reading comics? There's so much. I mean, that's a hard question because there's so much good stuff. But I mean, for you, what would you say? What would you recommend to Naman and I?
Well, Frank Miller's first run on Daredevil, the whole Elektra thing, which you guys probably have read, but if you haven't, highly recommend that. Man, I wish I could find so there's a Conan by Barry Windsor Smith, or the art by Barry Windsor Smith, script by Roy Thomas, called Red Nails. And it's been reprinted in a couple of different places. I think right now the place to find it would be in those Marvel omnibuses. Or if you can find the original place that it appeared was Savage Tales #2 and #3.
Is that the magazine?
The
size?
magazine from like 1970 or so.
And those were like black and white comics.
Those
right?
were black and white, yeah. And there have been colorized versions. Like there's a Marvel Treasury version that's colorized. And I think that's one of the very best Barry Smith Conan stories. And I'm a big fan of Barry Smith. Let's see. So much stuff.
Yeah. You mentioned Alan Moore. What are your thoughts on The Watchmen?
I love The Watchmen.
Yeah.
I mean, if you haven't read The Watchmen, give that a try. I do think it might be a little bit of a shame that some people, the first superhero comic they read is Watchmen. And I feel like that's kind of backwards.
Yeah.
But that's just the way it happens now.
Yeah.
I love his Swamp
really
Thing run.
Very, very cerebral. It's a very cerebral book. So it's cerebral on many levels. So it's a hard read, but yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. It's a more mature read. It's definitely, graduate level comics reading.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so much great stuff. Like I love the Chris Claremont X-Men run, although I don't think I've read the later parts of it. But so that's kind of one of those weird things. I love Jack Kirby's New Gods.
Oh, okay.
And it usually comes in, well, right now they're publishing it like in omnibuses with all the Fourth World comics together. If you're familiar with that Fourth World thing, but I think it might be
curious
better.
about Fourth World. I haven't seen any comic books yet.
So
Curious
they're
about
publishing them in giant omnibuses, where it starts with Jack Kirby's work on Jimmy Olsen, and then the Forever People, and then the New Gods, and it mixes them all together. And that New Gods was also going to be on my pile here of comics favorite comics in my collection.
Awesome.
But I think the 11 issues of New Gods, although very incomplete, is kind of a masterpiece of the Silver Age leading into the Bronze Age superhero mythology kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And for Jack Kirby, it's probably the summing up of all his experiences in World War II and all that kind of stuff. So it's, as an adult rereading it, it's interesting with that context of knowing that, you know, he was in combat in World War II and had some pretty intense experiences there.
Yeah, thank you for recommending that. I didn't realize. So that's a Kirby, not only illustrated, but also Kirby wrote the book.
Written by Kirby. Yeah. There were only 11 issues before DC canceled it.
Yeah.
And it was kind of the backbone of this larger tapestry he was building called the Fourth World, which includes Forever People, Mr. Miracle, and oddly enough, this Jimmy Olsen comic that they had him do. But it's better, in my opinion, to read the New Gods first before you explore those other ones.
Okay.
Is that comic book expensive to acquire?
That's going to be expensive, yeah. I would imagine.
This number one is a bit on the expensive side, yeah. I'm trying to remember what I paid for it. It might have... I bought it from ETA Nick, so I probably got a pretty good price. Do you guys know that channel?
Yeah, I know ETA Nick.
Yeah.
So I've bought comics from him a number of times, and I just trust him to give me... or not cheat himself, but to give me a good price. So,
right.
And I can't remember what he charged me for this. It might have been $70, $60, $70. And it probably goes up and down. I don't know.
I think it's probably like way over $100 now, I'm sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is a Silver Age.
Well, so some people count this as the beginning of the Bronze Age.
Okay.
And then some people count the first Conan as the beginning of the Bronze Age. And other people say the death of Gwen Stacy. So I don't know. I would say it's clearly a transition from silver to bronze.
Yeah. Death of Gwen Stacy's a little late, late.
It's a little on the late side. Yeah. Now, I did read the Gwen Stacy comic as a kid, and it traumatized me.
Yeah.
She's
that would traumatize me.
She's a fan favorite. Why would they do that?
I know. And I don't know how old I was, 11 or 12, and I just couldn't believe that this beautiful girl would die and they wouldn't bring her back.
Yeah.
Because in one issue, she seems to be dead, and I was sure she would be alive in the next issue, but no, she was still dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was I have a very few moments like that when reading books. I don't know if you guys the Throne, what was that TV series?
Game of Thrones?
Game of Thrones, when they killed off the guy. He was one of my favorite guys, and they killed him off on first season. I'm going,
I know.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
I mean, that's like
I read the novels, and I was like,
I read the novel
can't believe
too,
they killed that guy. And then they kill a couple of others that you think are going to be the ones you relate to.
Yeah, I sometimes.
Oh, looks like we lost Naman there.
Oh,
what happened?
I think we lost your visual for the moment, but you're back.
I'm back. Okay. All right.
Yeah, Gore's saying the first Gwen, and then when you get back into comics, Elektra's killed off. It wasn't as traumatic for me by the time I was 19.
Yeah, Elektra kind of had it coming, I guess.
I mean, it was very dramatic when she was killed off.
Yeah.
But, and Gwen Stacy was such an innocent. You know, Elektra is not, has blood on her hands and everything.
Yeah. I love Elektra. So yeah, let's get into some of the books. You already showed the Avengers, and was the New Gods also one of
the New Gods was also on this little pile of sort of key to me comics.
Okay.
I view things in terms of runs. So this stands for the whole run of the New Gods.
I'm really thankful and disappointed at the same time that only has 13 runs.
11, yeah.
11.
It is
so
very.
At least
it's easier to collect, but it's disappointing that it ended so quickly.
Easier to collect, but not.
Is the last issue in that run also very high priced? I would imagine so.
No. I think all the other issues you could probably find in the, I don't know, $10 range, or maybe even less, depending on the condition.
Okay.
But it's not one that's focused on by collectors at this point. It was kind of. I mean, obviously the first issue, because it's the first appearance.
Yeah.
But in terms of the rest of the run, I think.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's focused on the Marvel work that Kirby
Right.
did. So yeah, that's good for Kirby fans, I guess.
Yeah.
That
Actually, as a footnote to that, there's Commandy, which is also Kirby at DC. This is 40 issues of Kirby art.
Wow.
So
yeah.
that's really nice to collect.
Yeah.
This one's actually my favorite issue here. I don't know if Naman has this one yet. Issue number 6.
Oh, that's
where
a sad
he has
issue.
this beautiful girlfriend.
For a little bit.
I don't want to spoil it. You said for a little bit, yeah.
Yeah,
So it's
well,
also like Gwen Stacy broke
I
my
can kind of
heart.
pick up on what happens.
My favorite issue is issue number 4.
Which one was that?
That's where Commandy finds purpose.
Uh-huh.
He finds purpose. So,
Is that where he finds out there are some humans left?
No, that's when he finds out that, hey, I need to give a human being chance by not giving the technology to the animal kingdom.
Ah, okay.
And so that was his purpose. You go, hey, this is what I need to do. And up to issue number 4, he was sort of lost, into this world. But that issue, he goes, hey, this is my purpose, and I was really excited for his purpose.
Wow.
I don't know if Otaku, if you've collected any Kirby from this era, but he was maybe one of the first people to constantly do these double page spreads.
Yeah, I love those double page spreads.
They're always stunning.
Yeah.
Let me see. I can't remember if issue number 1 has a double page spread. No. Oh, yes, it does. So
that's beautiful.
Just for the art alone, and Commandy is not expensive at all.
Yeah, Commandy is easy to collect.
Number 1, a little bit, but not too much.
Yeah.
But in terms of just art and a fun story, it's a young adult story. It's a kid's story, but it's a good one.
Yeah, it really brings that youth in you.
Yeah.
Want to go off shirtless in the summertime.
Yeah, it's a boy's adventure story, talking animals all over the place.
Huck Finn kind of story. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Cool.
I don't know why my camera's making me blurry now. There we go.
There you
go. The dulcet voice. You know what? Occasionally I've re-listened to my own videos and it makes me fall asleep. I am the cure for my own insomnia.
Yeah, I watch, now that you mention it, I do watch YouTube videos right around bedtime. So yeah, your videos definitely help. But yeah, I think you have a couple more books to show off.
Yeah, so part of that early story, I fell in love with Conan.
Oh, nice.
Oops, now I'm out of focus again. Come on. There we go.
There you go.
So this is Conan number 1. It took me a long time to pull the trigger on this because I don't like to spend a lot of money on comics. And I bought this from a YouTuber who's not doing many videos anymore, named Jean Paul Ace Peter, after the members of KISS. But
really?
he was selling off the best parts of his collection at some point because he had a financial problem. And so I thought, well, if I'm going to buy Conan number 1 from anyone, it should be from someone from YouTube. So I bought this, and I think I got a pretty good deal.
Nice.
That looks
and
nice.
It's in quite good condition. But when that fateful day when I bought the Avengers, the other comic I really wanted to buy was this one.
Oh.
And I remember looking at it for a long time on the spinner rack. So this is Conan number 10. It's the 25 center from when they were large size.
Wow.
And so although I got the Avengers, we were on vacation and we would go swimming at a lake, and I would take my cape. No, I would find a stick. Sorry. I would find a stick and I would run around pretending I was Conan, even though I hadn't read any Conan stories yet.
So that obviously not getting that comic had stuck with you.
Right. It stuck with me. And then I read Conan novels, by the original writer, and just really got into Conan. Awesome. A lot of my drawings as a kid are of Conan.
Mm-hmm.
So in fact, so that leads me, eventually I learned before they did Conan, Roy Thomas and Barry Smith did a Conan-like character just for a few pages in this Chamber of Darkness. So I've collected that.
Wow, Chamber of Darkness.
Let me see if I can show you the. I think it was this. Yeah, there it is. He was called Star. Was he called Star the Slayer? But anyway, it's called The Sword and the Sorcerers. And of course, this kind of thing is called Sword and Sorcery.
Sword and the Sorcerer. There was a movie I remember.
Oh, really?
Sword and the Sorcerer. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the whole genre or subgenre of fantasy is sometimes called Sword and Sorcery. Mm-hmm. So this is kind of an example of my, once I get into something, I want it all. I want everything related to it. So this is one of my favorite Barry Smith Conan issues.
The first appearance of Sonya?
It's actually her second appearance, but people treat it like her first.
First cover appearance.
It's her first cover appearance, and there's a lot of Red Sonja in it, but she has a pretty good appearance in number 23, which is also took me a long time to pull the trigger on 23 because of the cost. When I was a kid, I had a copy of this, and I was copying drawings in it, and I spilled ink all over it.
Oh,
it was tragic.
Yeah.
At least you didn't put pencil over it like I did.
Right. And so while I'm down my Conan rabbit hole, one more thing is this issue, number 25, was actually the first issue I ever got to actually get a hold of. And it was because we were my family was flying to, I think, Hawaii. And because we lived in Hawaii for a year. And so for the airplane ride, my parents let me buy comics at the airport. And so I remember getting this.
Who's the cover by?
That's a Gil Kane cover. And it's the first issue drawn by John Buscema. And my wife used to watch my videos and heard that this was like an important issue of Conan for me. So she bought me this signed edition by John Buscema.
Oh, nice.
Who passed away many years ago.
Yeah.
So back then they would sign it on the first page like that.
Wow.
So this is both, a comic I love, and I love John Buscema, and a sign of my wife's love too. So very important.
Awesome.
There you go.
So that's the Conan section.
That's you're not gonna get rid of that one.
No, never. So the next thing I'll go into is The Spirit by Will Eisner. Are you guys familiar with that?
I am. I've heard of The Spirit, yes.
So he his best work was in the 40s. But then people sometimes say he invented the graphic novel, but he didn't. But he certainly popularized it later in the 80s. But so I stumbled across, I mentioned that we traveled around a lot. When I was 14, we lived in Switzerland, in Geneva, and there were no comic books in English.
Oh.
And I was bereft because I couldn't read French. I could talk it on the playground a little. But then at this tobacco store, they had one English comic, and it was these Spirit reprints from Warren Magazine. Mm-hmm. And so I spent a lot of time reading these because I didn't have any other comics to read. And it's kind of the, what's the right term? But like a primal source for lots of comimes.
Remind me of the Shadow kind of.
The characters like the Shadow, but the art is so innovative. He in the 40s invented so many techniques that Jim Steranko and I'm trying to just about everyone. I'm sure even Jim Lee and many generations following. The thing that the Spirit is fit. So recently, or not so recently, but when I realized I could buy things, I could get everything I want suddenly on the internet. I got some original Spirit things. They were published in newspapers. So they're very fragile. They came in the middle of newspapers in the 40s. And it was because the newspapers realized comic books had gotten really popular. So they wanted a comic book of their own in the Sunday section.
Wow.
So one of the things.
So this is after.
That's from what year?
This one is 1946. These are both 46.
And they're colored.
Their color, like the
in the
color
newspaper.
funnies in the newspaper.
Wow.
So they, but they started in 1941 or 40, but the sweet spot is 46 through 50 in terms of the artistic. I do have some from the earlier period, but these are the ones I grabbed.
This is before the comic strip or after the comic strips?
This is the
Before.
original source,
Yeah.
and these are reprints of it.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
did newspaper always had a comic strip then?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Newspapers had comic strips since about 1895 or so,
Okay,
or maybe
okay.
even earlier.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they had those Sunday sections back then.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then, Superman came along and was selling millions of copies, and they said we're worried that we might be losing some business to that. So they hired Will Eisner to create a comic book to put in the Sunday section. So it's actually, I'm not going to take these out actually, but it's on newsprint, and you can unfold it and it becomes a newspaper page.
That is crazy.
And it's so influential that it's reprinted in all kinds of different versions over the years.
So you got that from eBay?
I got these from eBay. I think they're much more expensive now, but I'm not.
So how many page when you
it's just 8 pages.
8
total.
pages.
So it'd be two or 4 pieces of paper. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Wow. But I mean, in those 8 pages, you've got a whole sort of
story.
Yeah.
And since there was no cover, he innovated the idea of these splash pages. Every splash page is different, with the name The Spirit integrated in it.
Wow.
Right.
And he innovated all kinds of visual stuff that all the best comic book artists have drawn on since.
So Will Eisner, though, he's
and that's why they named the Eisner Award after
Will Eisner Award.
Oh, is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. But he's done other work as well, hasn't he?
Yes. So, well, before these, he was part of the very first generation on comics. So you'll find, if you research, that a lot of the Golden Age characters were created by him or people he worked with. Blackhawk comes to mind, but I know there's others. And then he started a business where he did educational comics for the Army. And when he retired from that in the late 70s, he devoted himself to these graphic novels that were just stories of life in the New York ghetto, the Jewish ghetto that he came from.
Boy, I'd like to get hold of those Army comic books.
You can find them here or there. They're not too. They're not cheap, but they're not too expensive.
Yeah.
At least the ones I've seen.
And so those are what you're referring to is like really sort of the first like graphic novels.
At least in the United States.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what went. I mean, Japan looks to me like we could call those graphic novels, and European comics like Tintin, we could call those graphic novels. But for the US market, he was amongst the very first. And because he was such a major figure, that kind of popularized the idea that you could do graphic novels. His most famous one is called A Contract with God, which is actually a series of short stories set in the ghetto in the 30s or 20s.
I'm going to have to read it now. You've given me an assignment.
I'm throwing too much history at you.
We're going to have to rewind and watch this over again.
So my final thing is not a comic. So another thing that I started doing, and it might be partially the fault of coming into YouTube, because I saw the people spending a lot of money on comics. And, and I hit a point where, I have more spending money than I used to for my entire life because I'm old and I invested well. So I started buying original art.
Whoa.
And my sort of piece de resistance is a page of Commandy.
Oh, no.
My Lord. How did you afford that?
Well, it wasn't cheap, but it's not like Jim Lee artwork or anything.
Okay.
And it was a few years ago before the market really exploded.
Mm.
And also it's from issue 39, so it's near the end of his run, and for whatever reason that's less valued by the art people.
So that's
I can tell you off air how much
Kirby.
I spent
It's
on
original Kirby art.
it's original Kirby art. This is the
basically-
paper. You might be able to smell his tobacco because he smoked a pipe.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible.
And if you look really closely, you can see some extra lines, although
Can
like
you
there's
preserve the smell?
Wow.
I've got it inside this paper.
Wow.
So that's the latest story of my collecting is original art. So I thought if you guys want, I could show you a few more pieces. I don't know how
Yes,
Sure.
please. Yes, please. That's the good
So
stuff.
that's
right
the
there.
peak piece.
Yeah.
So how I mean, when
You
you
got
start
that?
collecting original arts now,
I'm sorry?
when you start collecting original arts,
When did I?
yeah,
I want to say 5 or 6 years ago.
5-6 years ago, because
And
of
so
YouTube.
I've been on YouTube for 10 years now,
Right.
just about.
And is that stuff you find on eBay or you go to an
I've
auction?
I've bought a
or-
few things on eBay, but mostly from heritage auctions,
What's a hair? Okay.
which it's a bit of an ordeal.
Yeah, show please.
Yeah.
But and a lot of this stuff I got before this current boom. Let me see.
I mean,
So
still,
I-
like the starting bid on that must have been high to begin with. I mean,
Well, it's a lot cheaper than like getting a Fantastic Four #1 or something.
is it? Okay.
Yeah, or it was.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't like to talk money, but if you want, I can tell you.
No, I mean that's. But I mean, everybody's imagining how much you paid. So I mean, I can imagine you paid a pretty penny for that.
Yeah, and part of my rationalization is this is not going to go down in value.
Oh no.
No.
So
yeah.
either when I'm much older or when my daughter gets this, she can sell these.
Yeah, that's a good investment.
So I don't feel, and I do have more money than I ever did before. So in general, I feel like it's an okay investment at the least.
I mean,
Yeah.
people invest in art. This is art. This
is art.
definitely
Right.
pure art. Yeah.
This is art.
Well, and that's another, we talk about liking the story and stuff. I do feel like we comic book collectors are fans of art. We are art appreciators.
Yeah.
It might not be appreciated by, the high art people in galleries in New York City, but it still is,
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
I think it's already. I mean, it's not fine art galleries, but in terms of the value, what it can command,
Oh, happy Easter,
Right.
everyone.
definitely there. I mean,
Yeah.
I think Superman sold for 5.3 million. That's that's pretty.
Well, that black costume thing just blew my mind. Like,
Yeah, that panel
because I'd
art.
been following art a lot on Heritage,
Yeah.
and I was upset that there's all these things that cost $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, and suddenly
Yeah.
someone's paying $3.6 million for a page.
Yeah.
So this is from a page of Dracula by Gene Colan and Tom Palmer,
Wow.
who are also favorite artists of mine. Gene Colan being the penciler and Tom Palmer the.
Is that like a page from a key issue? Do you know?
No, I don't think so. I mean, even when things were cheaper when I was buying it, I had to get pretty unimportant pages. But that's not what really matters to me. I just like the artwork, and I like having
What is that
the
from again?
original.
Dracula.
Dracula.
Okay.
Marvel's Dracula from the 70s. It was
Beautiful.
written by Marv Wolfman and drawn the
Yeah.
whole run by Gene Colan.
Mm.
I like that page. That's a very nice page you got with
Yeah.
all the ink and the dark panels. Yeah.
But everything I have is lesser of its kind. Like the Commandy is from one of the last issues.
But when you get I mean, obviously
splash pages too. Covers are outrageous, but even a
Yeah.
splash page can be
Yeah.
tens of thousands.
Yeah. I think so. For me, like that, I eventually want to get to a place where I own a piece of original Jim Lee art.
I don't know how
And
you're going to do that.
I know. I would be happy with, to be honest, I'd be happy with his like more obscure like works, just like
Right.
half a page even. But
Yeah.
that's
Well,
how.
maybe
that's
you
how-
can find it.
I hope so. Yeah.
I
And
feel
maybe when
lucky
you
that I
invite Jimmy
started a few
over,
years ago.
he'll
I mean,
give
a
us
few.
one.
What'd you say, Naman?
When we get the Jimmy over here.
Let's see.
That's our hope, right? We want to get Jimmy on the show.
You
I'm
guys may
working on
not
it.
have heard
I'm working
of.
on it, Naman.
You guys might not have heard of Gene Day, but I was very into his artwork, and he was an artist on Master of Kung Fu, and I actually managed to get quite a bit of his work at a pretty good price. And I've noticed the prices have gone up quite a bit since I got it.
Where is that one?
So this is from Master of Kung Fu, the Marvel comic from the late 70s.
Nice.
This might even be 1980 or so, or 81.
He's not in there though, huh?
Is there something you particularly look for on a page when you are evaluating what you're going to buy? Is there like a theme or something that you look for?
I'm, again, going to the art of comics, I look for interesting continuity. So yeah, this does not have Shang-Chi on the page. But I just liked the way the page was laid out and how the continuity worked.
It looks beautiful. It looks gorgeous. Yeah.
I do. So I have a lot of Gene Day. I won't show them all, but since you mentioned Shang-Chi, I'll bring you one that does have Shang-Chi. And I think
my gosh.
I think that's Shang-Chi's sister there. I'm not sure. I'd have to double check.
Nice.
But so we got Shang-Chi, we've got Fu Manchu. Now erased from history because he's politically incorrect. But I still think of him as an interesting concept.
Nice.
Let's see.
So holding it together.
I am a Superman fan, and in my older age, I became. Whoops, something fell down there, but nothing important. I became a fan of Kurt Swan.
Yes,
and I was able to get quite a few Kurt Swan pages for good prices, and those have also gone up, but they're still, compared to other things.
Whoa, is that a robot Superman?
Yes, it's a robot Superman.
What do you know? What book that's from? Superman or Action Comics?
This one's from World's Finest.
World's Finest.
245. I have a bunch of them actually.
Nice.
But yeah, these are beautiful, and I think because he produced so much Superman, you can find pages by him.
Okay, that's something actually I might target. That's something I might target because I love Kurt Swan.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Let's see.
I'd have to sell some comics to get.
Listen, let's agree to not bid against each other.
No, these are like Damian said, these are investments. So I don't think it's necessarily something.
No.
Yeah, you're not going to lose money in the long run over a piece
of. So you got it, Conan.
I got some Conan. This is from later in the Savage Sword. So this is from Savage Sword number 96.
Nice.
That's from magazine, right?
From the black and white magazine. Yeah.
And the artist is
it's John Buscema. No, so I don't own any. Barry Smith and Neil Adams. I don't know how I'm going to get a hold of them. I mean, I would love to have work by them. It's amazing that I have some Jack Kirby.
Even John Buscema. I mean, come on, that's.
I think the thing with John Buscema, like Kurt Swan, is he produced a lot of work. So it's a little more accessible. And this is inked by Rudy Nebres, who is a Filipino artist. And I don't know if you guys know about the Filipino artists. There was a huge wave of them in the second half of the 70s in the US. And they were all incredible artists. And Rudy Nebres was one of the good ones.
Yeah.
So they often had in the black and white Conan, they would have the Filipino artists ink John Buscema. John Buscema would just do a very rough drawing, and these artists were so good they could make it into something beautiful.
Amazing. That's absolutely amazing.
Here, I'll just show one more. This is a modern one. I don't collect too many modern ones, but it's kind of interesting. Oops. Are you guys familiar with Patrick Gleason? I think he's at Marvel now doing Spider-Man, but
Right.
he used to work on the Batman and Robin comic, and then he wrote and drew a miniseries called Robin, Son of Batman.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the pencils.
Nice. Oh, wow.
It's hard to see.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
as you look at it, there's like X's all over the place, like showing where the blacks should be. This came with the inks.
Wow.
So the inker, a separate person, Mick Gray, must have received a digital file and then printed it out on this page and then inked it.
Kept the original.
Yeah.
Without...
And then they sold the two together.
Wow.
And unfortunately for them or whoever was selling it, no one else was interested on Heritage Auctions. So I got this one for well under $100.
That's incredible.
Wow.
It doesn't have. It doesn't. Oh no, I think that might be Robin there, but it doesn't have the major shots on it. Again, that's how you get the things cheaper.
Wow.
But for me, it's really interesting just seeing. Oops.
Did you pick this one up at auction as well?
At that auction site. Yeah.
Okay. Amazing. So that's like original sketch right there. Yeah.
Right. This is
that's the original.
This
sketch.
Is all the penciler is doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard to get it focusing on the pencil art. I don't know if you can see all those X's. Those X's are telling the inker where to put black.
Yeah. Yeah. Incredible.
I may just drop collecting comic books. Just go to collecting art prints.
That was going to be the last, but then I saw this. I had taken it out. This is Little Lotta from the publishers of Richie Rich.
Mm-hmm.
And since I used to read these with my daughter, I became kind of fascinated with them. I used to find them very cheaply at the comic book stores. So I bought some Little Lotta art.
Little Lotta.
It did not.
That's
cost
a funny
money.
name. That's a funny name.
And this is a larger size. This shows you in the old days how much bigger they drew.
Yeah.
So this must be from the 60s.
Oh, that means they spent more time on the drawings.
Right. And in fact, if you look at Jack Kirby artwork, if you know the timing, there'll be more panels on the page back when the art page was bigger. When they got the smaller art page, he would sometimes just do 4 panels on a page. So yeah, it probably changed comics quite a bit when they changed that. But I think it helped. It made printing cheaper. They could put more things on the plate or something like that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, actually, make sure you take care of what you just showed us. You're drinking beer around.
I know. Yes.
I don't want
moving them all away.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you for
I have
showing
yet
that
to spill a beer on a comic, and on original
yeah.
art, that would really be bad.
Yeah.
I have had a few tape accidents with comics.
Oh, I thought you were going to say with the original art.
I always, as soon as I buy a comic, I remove the tape.
Yep.
And I just live without taped bags because I've had some bad experiences.
Yeah, me too. I try to take the tapes off because I snagged it before.
Yeah,
so.
If you snag a cover on there, you could lose part of that cover, and that's nasty.
Always take the tape off. Yes. Yeah. Okay, so thank you for showing that to us. We've not yet to see original art to you. So, that was very special, I'm sure, for all of our viewers. But let's get into the reason. So you kind of took us back to, your fascination with comic books on the spinner rack and the fact that your parents really didn't kind of, want to get you comics. That kind of made you want to do it more. And obviously when you got your hands on them, they were cherished. But we're kind of taking a step back from that. Why do you think we or all of us as a certain subculture of people gravitate to this medium? It's a wonderful medium that integrates a very creative, collaborative, integrated creative process. But
Right.
what is it for you that said, hey, you know what, I want to collect this, and I'm going to collect this into my, older years?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I think it's a lot of different things coming together. I think I suspect that all of us have, like I said, that brain.
Damian made a video on this. I think why this comic book is so addictive.
Why are comics so addictive? Yeah, I made that video 9 or 10 years ago.
But let's give us the summary of that video.
Yeah.
But so I think it starts with those of us who like comics have that brain that it appeals to. But it's also kind of, well, just think it's amazing that like many of us have stopped reading comics and came back 30 years later and they're still there.
40 years for me. 40
There's
some
that
years for
continuity, which is kind of fascinating, right? You can start deciding which parts of the X-Men interest you the most, or which artists, or what. There's so many different facets to it, and it just has gone on and on forever. And I think, because they're both fascinating to our part of our brain, and they're collectible. That makes them interesting too. And boy, I'm not thinking of all the things I said in that video way back when. But
you did say something about
at an even bigger distance from it, I've realized a hobby is one way of self-expression. And so whatever your hobby is, you do it your way, and it expresses what you're interested in. It's not like at a job where people tell you what to do, or you have to, make a certain impression on people or whatever. And that's what's so exciting when we all find each other on YouTube, because we've met people we can be ourselves with, right? No holding back on what we love about comics.
Right.
So that makes it more exciting. And I think, you could do that with any hobby. You could collect cars if you had enough money, if that was your thing. But comics are, for the most part, relatively cheap, and there's just so much there to explore so that it can keep you going. And I have kind of, made a decision. There's only so much time left to spend on hobbies. And so I'm going to focus more on this hobby that I've enjoyed the most. And I think that's why my channel has lasted for 10 years, because I'm just enjoying myself. And, it's been great when I've met people. That's fantastic. And so I love that. And then I just love talking about the comics.
Yeah.
And so it's my outlet of a place to express that weird little quirky self. So
I would absolutely, what you touched upon is absolutely correct. And, I think you look at what we as a human culture, even back through the prehistoric times where people are drawing on caves, doing the cave, those are comics essentially. And so it's been there as part of our culture. And then just in the last century, did it become really this industry, and you had all these creators, build something. And even though there's a DC Marvel sort of competition, it was very collaborative. People were kind of, bouncing, stealing ideas from one another and building upon that. And
that's true. And you can feel that collaborativeness as you get deeper and deeper into it. Yeah. And I mean, we aren't comic book creators, but we still feel part of the whole thing by diving deep into it.
I mean, the medium is not a medium until someone transmits it and someone receives it.
Yep.
So if without us, that medium is not complete. So
yeah, it is for. I mean, when I read something, and I just feel like they're creating something for my entertainment. So I do feel like we're kind of part of that process. They're creating something that will reach to younger readers, or whatever target audience. I think now it's so the audiences are so diverse. You have really this sort of subsets of comics, but back when we were collecting, when there was just Marvel and DC, it's a lot clear cut. It was just they're reaching young boys basically. But yeah, that's awesome.
Let's say when I go to the beach when I was a little kid, and let's say I picked up some shells and I put up the shells or something. That shell reminds me of where I've been. To me, comic book is when it not only reminds you where you've been, but when you've been, time you've been. It's like, oh, that childhood moment when you opened it up and met these new friends you made, and then you are opening up these comic books again, and you're seeing those old friends those old friends I met back when.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like,
it's almost, for the nostalgic part of it, it's almost like I can connect back to the way I was thinking once.
Right. Yeah.
And it gives me, and as I continue to read comics, it gives me a continuity of self, I guess, of kind of a private self, because it was,
connection to myself,
going to school or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like meeting myself once again.
Yeah, exactly. You're meeting yourself in the old comics.
Yeah. Charlton. Planet of the Apes.
So yeah, Charlton was there, and at least Metarog was reading it. I love Metarog's a perfect example. You watch his channel. It's just him. It's what he likes. And because we all understand loving comics, we can just accept him for that, and learn from it too. I mean, I've bought comics because I was watching Metarog, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. That obscure comic about the guy whose hand flies off his body. I'm gonna go get it.
What is that? Which one is that one?
I can't remember the name of it. Metarog covered this obscure company that only lasted for a short while, I think in the late Silver Age, and I went out and bought some of the comics he mentioned on.
The hand guy, the one with the bionic hands.
It wasn't bionic hands. It was like this guy's body parts flew off, and that was his power.
Okay.
But I can't remember the name of it.
And he would retrieve the parts.
He was called Captain Marvel.
Captain Marvel. Okay.
But there was only like 3 issues, and I think I managed to get 1 or 2 of them. Because Metarog has influenced me, but I already kind of liked obscurities. But he has shown me these obscurities I never heard of, and it's just that's a fun part of collecting too. Is just kind of turning up something.
It's like having multiple eyes out there.
Multiple eyes.
I'm trying to find something here that I misplaced. So are you guys were talking about Larry Hama.
Oh yeah. I'm a big Larry Hama fan.
And I realized that where did it go? Come on. How did I misplace it? I had a really early Larry Hama comic here I wanted to show you guys.
Okay.
There it is. Have you heard of Atlas Comics? So they're
yes, I have.
A less obscure. They lasted about a year.
I got 3 comic books from them.
And have you heard of Wolf?
Vampire.
No.
It is written and drawn by Larry Hama in 1974.
Oh, wow.
And inked by Klaus Janson.
So only issue 1 to 3, right? On that one too?
There's 4 issues, but he only did the first 2 issues. They kept changing everything.
Yeah.
So I have only seen him draw here and there, but I remember thinking he was the greatest thing when I read this comic as a kid.
Amazing.
And so he was writing and drawing at an early stage, and that shows how long he's been in the business.
Yeah. So a lot of people don't realize that he had done a lot of artwork early on, and then at some point in his career, they just said, "Hey, maybe you should just do writing," and he was solely just writing comics, which is I think a shame.
Yeah. So these 2 issues he wrote and drew. Wow. I'm not sure if he did the covers, I suspect he did do this cover, but I'm not sure.
You know, Atlas Comics, though, it seems like, because I know Neil Adams was doing work for Atlas.
He did some nice covers. Larry Hama, some other very good artists. Howard Chaykin, Steve Ditko was there.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I heard Mike Grell, although Mike Grell never actually worked for them, he almost did. And he said they were promising creators to keep their rights.
Right.
And they lied, and they didn't get the rights. So this by rights should be owned by Larry Hama because he wrote it and drew it. I'm sure he created this character.
I gotta keep my eye out for that.
No wonder they didn't succeed.
Yeah. I gotta keep my eye out.
Lying to your artists is not a good thing.
Right. But that's how artists were treated back then. They were lied to all the time.
Thank you for showing that to me.
Those are awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love Larry Hama's Wolverine run from the late 80s, early 90s. That's incredible.
That's right.
Yeah. That's
Jim Craig on 3 and 4. Okay.
But I haven't read his G.I. Joe yet, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I would recommend that.
Look for that.
Yeah. So I know you're big into story, but the silent issue, I would really recommend.
Yeah, that one's legendary. I've heard about it many times. Yeah.
What is the silent issue?
It's a famous issue of G.I. Joe.
Oh, the one that I gave away.
The one you gave away. I still can't believe you did that. I still can't.
Well, you made someone very happy. I'm sure.
Well, the thing is, I got that from someone else, and I wasn't collecting it.
Yeah.
So I promised to give it, pay forward.
I hope the person who got it appreciates.
I think I know who has it. Is it what's his name? Shop and Drop. Or, no, was it? What's his name? Shop and Drop.
Shop and Drop.
Yeah, okay. Shop and Drop. Okay.
All right, so Damian, I've got to.
Shop and Drop.
You are, you're picking up comics. You're reading comics. Sort of, what's next in your, what's sort of in your field of view in terms of collecting? What are you trying to get or have your eyes out for? What's next in the collecting game?
Well, in original art, I've decided, since I love Conan so much, I'm going to look for more Conan artwork. And I'm forced by, even though I feel like, hey, I've got a lot of money to spend. When you look at original art, it's like, oh, okay, I don't have that much money to spend. So I'm now looking at slightly more obscure original art of Conan. I can't even remember how to pronounce the guy's name. Someone Khayyam. I recently bid, and I think I won on that, and it'll be coming in the mail soon. Oh, so nice. I'm still eyeing the original art. And another thing in original art that I'm interested in, which is affordable, is people's layout sketches. Mm-hmm. Like I bid on a Gil Kane layout because he always did a layout beforehand. Wow. And so you can buy those, for a few $100s, so cheap.
No, really?
And then also I wasn't that into DC back when I was a kid, but I've come to really appreciate sort of the weird DC corners. Mm. So I keep my eye out for things like Phantom Stranger and Weird War and House of Mystery and that sort of stuff. So I'm working on runs of those.
Okay, like the quirkier titles.
Mm-hmm. I just bought my first Black Hawk. I don't think I'll get all of that because that goes back to the Golden Age.
Wow.
And those will be expensive, but maybe a few Silver Age Black Hawks are kind of fun.
Nice.
I like them for their quirkiness.
Yeah.
And then a thing that I thought of, because Naaman was going through, I think it was Iron Man's, and he was saying, hey, is that a Jack Kirby cover?
No, yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
There was a period when Jack Kirby came back to Marvel's 1975-ish where he was doing tons of covers. Mm. So I'm trying to collect every mid-70s Jack Kirby cover.
Nice. Nice.
And it's kind of odd, like seeing, Jack Kirby did a Tigra cover. Who would think of Jack Kirby doing Tigra? So it just kind of tickles my funny bone to collect those.
That's
Yeah.
a great cover too.
You
So
know,
yeah, I'm mostly on the oddities because I've got most of my Avengers run that I wanted. I don't have the very earliest Avengers, and I think I'm just not going to go after those because I'd rather spend the money on original art.
yeah.
But I have like the whole Roy Thomas run on the Avengers, which I really like, and that kind of thing. So a lot of the Marvel that I always wanted to have, I now have.
Yeah.
They're bits and pieces still, but it's more the DC or the things like that.
You know
I've been
about
collecting a lot of the Marvel black and whites from the 70s, and
Nice.
I think I've got almost all of those now. So there's just a few. I don't know if I'll ever pull the trigger on Savage Tales #1 because that's now up to like $1,000 for an okay comic.
Wow.
And when I first started on YouTube, I looked and it was like $100, and I said, "Oh, wait for the price to come down." Bad idea.
maybe
Yeah.
maybe $1,000 isn't so big now. Maybe inflation, you know.
I have yet to pay $1,000 anywhere even near $1,000 for a comic book. I just
Well,
it's just not. But I have on the original art.
Yeah.
You know, the Stan Lee, he worked for DC for a little bit.
Right, he did Stan Lee like reimagines the DC
Reimagine
universe.
stuff.
Yeah, that was later. That was much later.
Yeah,
in his career.
when I find things like that in the 50-cent bins, I'll pick them up. But just as novelties.
They're not expensive at all.
No. Yeah, and that it was right around the time that I started on YouTube, maybe because of other YouTubers or maybe not. I can't recall, where I realized there's so many comics out there that are cheap. I mean, there's a few that are really expensive, but a lot of them were a lot cheaper than they were when I was younger.
Yeah.
The 50-cent bins, the dollar bins, the 50% off sales at a lot of the stores I go to.
Yeah.
So that's where I've become a bit of a hoarder. Like, oh, well, I might as well have all the Atlas comics because they're cheap, and I might as well get all of the Jack Kirby covers because all of this stuff can be found cheaply. But now I have too many comics.
Yeah, I think for me that's like I'm priced out of Silver Age stuff, so I'm really focusing on just bronze and copper because I think there's a lot of good stuff you can find in there. And for me, it's the stuff I read and the stuff I was closer to. Whereas some of the Silver Age stuff, you read those stories and you're just like, okay, this is just a little hokey, but yeah, I mean,
often it's for the art if it has a great artist on it.
Right.
I loved your interview with Slim too. He's a great guy.
Yeah, Slim is awesome.
And I learned stuff about him I didn't know from his regular videos. So that was cool.
What do you learn about him?
Well, that he was Laotian for starters.
Okay.
I had no idea.
Oh, you know what? I think you're the first white guy on this channel.
Oh, Damian.
Well, that's an honor. Thank you.
Damian's the first white person, but for me, like I've learned so much just in this conversation, and obviously there's a lot more for the fine art aspect. I think that's a lot of things. Eventually, you'll start collecting books, but at some point, you want to go to that next level where you actually own an original piece by the artists you love. And for me, I want to get there. I definitely like obviously Jim Lee, just something that's like the big goal, but even some of the smaller stuff, like you mentioned, if you turn your focus away from spending money on comic books and you just kind of up the ante on some of the original art, you can get a lot of good pieces. So thank you. I learned a lot. Learned a lot from this conversation.
Yeah, you can look on eBay. I would recommend checking out the heritage auctions, maybe just watch the auctions, so to speak, see how the prices go, and what pieces maybe that interest you that other people aren't quite paying as much attention to. It is a bit painful, to watch these things go up to these high prices, and I'll bid like $700 on something and think, wow, I've just bid a huge amount of money, and then wham, it goes up to $3,000, and it's like, oh, never mind.
Wow. I mean, I imagine you you go, oh, $700, $700. You could
Yeah.
put it in there and somebody bids $3,000.
It's definitely I think the hobbies, it's just grown. It's just grown to a point where these prices, people keep talking about like a crash and all this, but I think we're at a point where there's not going to be a crash per se, but for some of these like legacy books, those prices are going to stay solid.
Yes.
For the legacy stuff, but yeah, for these sort of minor keys, the more modern books, that's just a bubble.
Right. That's
there.
all kind of ephemera. You might be able to make some money if you flip it at the right moment.
Right.
But if you wait too long, you probably won't. I mean, there's probably exceptions, but it is also interesting to see as the generations roll along. Like when I started YouTube, I think a lot of people who were 80s comics readers were coming back to comics. It was the New 52, and New 52 brought us a lot of us in, and it brought me back to weekly comic book buying. I hadn't completely stopped, but now we see a lot of people who got their start around the Spawn, the Jim Lee and Todd McFarlane era. So that suddenly Spawn's a big deal, right? It really wasn't 10 years ago. You could get almost all Spawn for nothing. And so it'd be interesting to see if that maintains, if that generation keeps the prices up for things like that.
Spawn even had a movie out, and it wasn't that big deal even after the movie.
I think back then movies did not affect collectors.
Back then, and that movie, it didn't really do that well, and it wasn't the best movie. But I mean, I know a lot of people that look back at that movie and like it. But what I'm saying is, like, it didn't move the needle on, like, for example, like a Michael Keaton Batman would on the hobby, right? So,
I remember. I don't know if you guys remember X-Men issue 101, where the Phoenix comes up out of the water. So comic. I always loved that comic book, and when the first X-Men movie happened, I hope they make a comic book based on this story, right? So I'll bring that comic book out. I guess I never put it back into the box. I lost that comic book.
Oh no!
But that's one of the comic book that I wanted back, but it's too expensive for me to get it back. But
okay.
Well, as a kid, I had the first Punisher. I had the first Wolverine. I had they meant nothing to me.
Oh no! You just got them, and then
I had them. They were just part of my collection, and they got sold. When I wanted that gas money.
I hope somebody has your copy or something. I hope it didn't get trashed or anything. Okay, before we leave, I just want to get your thoughts on one last thing, and it's because it's kind of recent news. The sale of Superman. It's big news in the comic world right now. Superman issue number 1, a Mile High Comics copy, recently got a grade bump from CGC. It got resubmitted. It got a grade bump to 8.5, and that sold for $5.3 million.
I missed that. I didn't know about that.
Oh, okay, $5.3 million.
So that's a new huge record.
It's the record. It's the record for comic books now. It surpassed Spider-Man, Action Comics, all of them.
It's not even highest grade. It's not even highest grade.
Yeah, it's not even the highest grade out there.
Wow.
That's a crazy thing. There's a 9.0, I think, out there now.
Wow.
And people are wondering what that's going to sell for. But anyway, 8.5 sold for 5.3 million. And a lot of people, so I think people who have been kind of DC fans and Superman fans, they're kind of like coming out of the woodworks now and celebrating. I know when I heard the news, I kind of felt validated as a person who collected Superman books. And there's a lot of focus that's been on Marvel, and now DC also at the time of the sale, DC, the Warner Brothers announced that they want to revamp all the DC Universe cinematic stuff so that these characters like Superman and Flash and all the DC characters that, you know, were the tops back in the golden age. They want to bring these characters back and revitalize the content so that it's competitive with the Marvel cinematic stuff. What are your thoughts on just that whole DC Marvel and because you've been reading comics for a long time. I know you seem to be a Marvel guy, but
well, no, I sort of indicated in the 80s, I started leaning towards DC. You know, like when John Byrne took over Superman, that was pretty exciting too.
That was, yeah.
I would love it if DC got their act together with their cinematic universe. Especially the character Superman really is, I think, central, you know, and Christopher Reeves was so good at being Superman. It's too bad there weren't more good movies. You know, the first two movies were good, but
yeah.
But anyway, if they could find an actor like that, or just get the right feel for Superman,
or just get back
I think
to
when
that,
you get Superman right, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Just get back to that Christopher Reeve version, even
right.
The fact that he, you know, he's a Kansas boy and he comes out and he becomes a superhero. Just get back to that.
You don't need it to be gritty. People are going to love it with him being a big cheesy good guy.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I think success of Batman movie ruined the DC universe.
Right. It ruined the other DC characters.
Just because everybody had to be greedy and, you know, and dark. And I'm going, hold on, man. The Superman is not a. I mean, they live in two different universes. I mean, the Gotham Batman belongs in Gotham. Superman belongs in Metropolis. You know.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah, the whole, like, when they work together, that's a very cheesy comic book thing because they really don't mix, do they? They come from different worlds, like Naman said.
You think we're going to have a crossover between DC and Marvel someday in cinema?
When they get really desperate, I guess.
I can see that happening, yeah. It's all about...
That would be fun. That would be fun to see.
That would.
I really enjoyed, like, when they had the Hulk versus Superman in those Treasury editions, or Spider-Man versus... was it the Hulk versus Superman or Hulk versus Batman? I think that was weird. But anyway, I enjoyed those kind of
Superman and Spider-Man. They had one.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite comic books. Superman and Spider-Man crossover.
Yeah.
Well, I think, you know, another great thing, you were talking about me being the first white person. I love that you guys found each other. You know, there's probably hard to, and you have Jim Lee as one of the superstars, which we don't hear much about Korean Americans usually. So that's really awesome.
This was really strange find the us. I mean, Otaku. Because in our culture, I mean, at least in my generation, our culture is, I mean, just like you, comic book was not looked as a
it's not a road to success. So if you have parents,
it's not road to success. It's not road to scholarly. You know,
it's read a real book. Yeah, don't read a comic book. You got to read.
You want to be a bum, then you go read comic books. You know? But it's not like, another thing is also is a YouTube itself. If a 60-year-old man, Korean guy, going out there and saying, "Hey, I run a YouTube channel. I have to be. I have to run a YouTube channel."
YouTube itself is a little embarrassing for older guys. Yeah.
You know, it's like, so this, you know, all these things that are embarrassing to our community, you know, and come together like that. That's a pretty.
My parents just pretended I wasn't on YouTube. But a weird thing is, because I also do a occasional podcast with a friend I made from YouTube, and that is much more respectable, even if it's about comics. It's more respectable to do a podcast. But YouTube, I get a much bigger audience on YouTube and much more interaction. So I don't see why the podcast should, you know, have a higher respectability. But it's just kind of weird. Whatever I do is the unrespectable thing, I guess.
Rodney Dangerfield of the
But this has been a great way to meet people. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just fantastic. It's I can't be down on the internet because I've had such a good time on YouTube.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Even though I curse the internet sometimes for other reasons.
Dang thing not connecting. My camera's not working. I got this sweaty earphone on.
You
because
want me
my-
to change my password again?
All
Yeah.
right, man. I really appreciate you guys making this happen tonight. Really enjoy all the shows and tell.
Yeah, this is one of our better conversations. I really just enjoyed everything you shared with us today, and yeah, we tend to, you know, forget the historical part, the legacy part of the hobby because we're so maybe entrenched in the now. But I think it's good to go back and you know, read some of these older books and appreciate.
Yeah. However you do it is great. I mean, you follow your interests, and eventually it'll lead you in a bunch of different directions.
Right.
So yeah.
Yep.
Even with Jim Lee and Wildcats, I've realized, I need to collect the Wildcats for the Alan Moore Wildcats that I never read. You know, so there's just always all these different connections.
That's true. Yeah.
And I am so happy to meet both of you guys. Naman left some comments on my videos, and then I discovered he had a channel, and I loved his channel. And then he talked you up, and I really enjoyed your comic book cover battles. And I was watching a video of yours where you're trying to decide, I think, which things to send to CGC, which I know nothing about, but I thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
So I learned stuff from everybody, and I just love meeting different people. So it's really great the way these connections keep growing.
Yep. Thank you so much. All right. Well, thank you for taking the time this evening.
Hey.
And go check out you know, Sleepy Reader's YouTube channel if you haven't. It's a great, he does great reviews of you know, comics that have come out. So yeah, check his channel out. And Naman, any last thoughts?
No, I appreciate all the people that's here, that's at the chat room. I appreciate you guys you know, participating in this conversation. Appreciate, of course, Damian for giving us some fantastic history and stories and personal, you know, take on comic books and collection. So yeah, you guys got any future things coming up on your channels, both of you?
I am going to try and do some videos looking at art books, like the artist edition books that I have.
Oh, okay.
Like I just got a new John Buscema one. I ought to do that. And I have a whole bunch of others that I haven't really made videos of. So there's that. And I need to get back to my weekly comic book reviews, which I have neglected for the past few weeks.
Oh, sorry, you missed it. What
you
you
always check. 1904 is a great guy, by the way. He's been doing it a long time.
Okay.
He has now a new channel called Comic Swag, I believe.
Comic Swag. Okay.
Yeah, he gives us a different perspective too. So
Oh,
cool.
Easter weekend. Isn't it Easter weekend? Oh, okay.
Yes, it's Easter.
Tomorrow's Easter. Tomorrow's Easter.
Happy Easter,
Time
everybody.
to either eat candy or go to church, depending on or both.
Yeah.
Happy Easter, everyone. What about you, Otaku? You got any plans on your thing besides sending to CGC?
Yeah, aside from the CGC submission, I think I'm just going to try to pick up some more Silver Age Action Comics and Superman. I think I'm a little bit, I need to be a little bit more focused on that now, given sort of, I think now that the focus is on Superman again. I kind of appreciated that the focus was elsewhere, so I was just kind of picking up books here and there. But now that it's back on Superman, I'm sure there's going to be some competition at the comic shop. So we'll just see what happens there.
Okay. Well, everybody, please go sub to Otaku. I want him to get 100. And I'm going to ask him to.
Great channel. Definitely, everyone should sub.
Thank you.
Go sub him up. If he gets to 100, I'm going to flip the script and I'm going to make him do the live show on his channel.
Well, okay, so I mean, as just to keep people kind of interested in what's coming up next for this, we're going to be reaching out to a few comic book creators, and so they might be on the show very soon.
Okay.
And so just kind of, keep your eyes out for that. So Naman and I are working on that, and we'll reveal who that artist is once we confirm.
Okay. Next week, I think I'm gonna ask. He already agreed to it. What's his name? Munitia Minutes.
Oh yeah, he's great.
He's a great guy.
Munitia. I'm gonna ask
Another
him.
person he's been doing it longer than I have, but he took like a 7-year break.
So
He's
I'm
got
gonna
a
ask
lot of
Munitia Minutes
insight.
to come over, and I'm gonna ask pick his brain about New 52, because I missed that whole New 52 thing,
and also the refocus on the revitalization of the DC characters. I'm sure he's going to have a lot of insight on that. So
he's got a lot of deep DC knowledge. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. Have a good evening, both of you.
Thanks,
gentlemen.
everybody. Thanks, everybody.
And we'll see you next time. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. Oh, he's gone.